Hey, how's everybody doing? Jeremy Langlois coming to you from Houmas House Estate and Gardens from, I say this all the time, but one of my favorite rooms here on the property. This is our Neptune Ballroom. It's got a little aquatics theme, a little nautical theme here, which is perfect today because we're going to be cooking some seafood. But it also houses one of the truly unique relics that we have here on display at the estate, and that is our pre-Civil War submarine, just one of the many awesome things you can come and see here at Houmas House. This room we use often for banquets and weddings and just lots of good events that we all often have here. But any opportunity we get to cook in it, I always enjoy it. And I get to cook with y'all and do it in the nice comfort of the AC. With that said, we're going to go ahead and get started. What we're going to be preparing today is gazpacho. What gazpacho is a classic cold summer soup. Now, if cold soups are something you've never experienced before, you, like myself, whenever I kind of first heard about them, was kind of like, ooh, that's different. I don't know if that's something I like. Well, if you haven't given it a try, I would really encourage you to do so. I just think of it like this. There's nothing better on a nice winter day than a nice hot bowl of gumbo. Well, the opposite is true in the summer. Sometimes there's nothing better to start your meal with than something really light and refreshing like a cold soup, whether it be gazpacho, which we're making today. One of my personal favorites is the classic French soup vichyssoise, or even we do all sorts of cold soups here at Houmas House, like chilled avocado soup and stuff like that. So this is a whole world that we can kind of get into, but today we're preparing gazpacho. Now, in its simplest classic sense, gazpacho is a tomato soup with typically some cucumbers and onions, a little olive oil and lemon juice. You put it in a blender, boom, you hit the button and you puree it and it's ready to go. But since we're in Louisiana, we figure, and we like to just take everything in excess. We're going to kick it up, to quote another chef, we're going to kick it up a notch and do something where we're going to take that idea of that cold tomato soup, but we're going to really spice it up with some Louisiana flavor. We're going to actually add a bunch of interesting spices, which I'll go over each one individually to it. And then we're also going to add some seafood to it. Both of these are kind of non-traditional. So we'll get to a point in the recipe where I'm going to say, this is classic. And now we're going to enter into the realm of our Cajun Gazpacho or our enhanced gazpacho. So let's go ahead and get to it. Well, first thing we want to do is we just want to have some seafood prepared. I actually went and got some jumbo lump crab meat, which I got here. But also, check this out, guys. I got some really nice, beautiful Gulf shrimp. And basically, any seafood that you wanted to use for this recipe, you could totally add to it because we're going to add it to at the end. So you could have some poached oysters or some seared scallops. All those would be absolutely fantastic. But today we're going to be using good old, from the Gulf of Mexico, shrimp and crab. So since I have a shrimp here, just to show you how we're going to be preparing them, I'm just going to take the head off. I'm going to peel the shell off, but I'm going to leave that tail on. Just get all that right off. And then I'm going to grab a knife, and then I'm going to devein it. You know, we all know what that vein is. We don't want that in there. So let's just get that vein out of there. And other than that, we're ready to go. And one thing I also like about when you have these big, beautiful shrimp, by butterflying them, I always kind of like, just from a presentation point of view, which is something I'm always thinking about, I like how whenever your shrimp is butterflied, they kind of open up whenever you boil them, and I just find that looks nice as well. So now that we have this shrimp peeled, I got about a dozen shrimp ready to go. We're going to boil them, but the first thing we want to do, we're just not going to throw this in to salted water. What are we, up north? No, we're not doing that. This is Louisiana. So what we have here is some good old, this is just a dry crab boil. You can find this in many stores, often in two forms, either in a powdered form or a liquid form. And then I would suggest with each one, because the ingredients vary, you can look on the side of the box or the side of the container and see your ratio of how much spice to water that you need to use. But we're just going to add that seasoning mix to it, and that's just going to give this this shrimp as we boil it just a really great spicy flavor. So I like to add that in. I like to let the water with the seasoning come up to a boil, which we have here, just to get all those flavors kind of marinated. And man, if you could smell it, it should smell really strong. If you were to actually taste this water, it should taste really spicy and taste really salty. That's what you're looking for because we're trying to impart some of that flavor into the shrimp itself. The shrimp itself will take on that flavor, but it's not going to take on all that flavor. So that's why you want the spice up so you get some in there. So we're just going to drop those shrimp right in. I'm going to give them a quick little spin, and then they're not going to take long to cook. It's going to take a few minutes. I'll just kind of be watching them as we start to get everything going for the gazpacho. But I'm just going to give them a quick stir just so it's all in there. And then the great thing about cooking shrimp is like if you're just starting to cook, shrimp is like the world's easiest thing to cook first. You can overcook shrimp for sure, but shrimp is so simple. When the shrimp starts to curl, it's like it has a built-in thermometer. When the shrimp starts to curl and it turns pink, shrimp is telling you, I'm ready, I'm cooked, and I'm ready to come out. And it's not going to take long. It's only going to take a minute or two. So we got that going. So now what we're going to do is, if you look at this recipe, which will be on our Houmas House website as well as Facebook, whenever this goes live, you'll be able to find it on both our Houmas House website and our Facebook page. This list has a lot of ingredients. I have a lot of ingredients here, but it's all simple. All simple things, and what we're going to do is we're going to just put it all in a blender and we're going to zap it. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to talk about each one as we go. It's a tomato-based soup. So we just have these are Creole tomatoes, but Roma tomatoes or any good quality tomato, they don't even necessarily have to be red. You can make a yellow gazpacho if you had some great golden tomatoes. I think that would be a nice twist, or you can even combine different colors. It's all good, but we got some nice Creole tomatoes. So we're going to start, this is our base. These tomatoes have been just roughly chopped. Now the beautiful thing about this recipes, guys, is that you don't have to get too crazy with your chopping. You'll see I have everything here chopped coarsely because we're just throwing it in a blender anyway. We're going to turn the buttons on, so you don't have to you just want everything cut down small enough to where it'll fit in the blender and grind easily. Let's just come back here and peek at our shrimp. And they are almost ready. So what I like to do, it's only been a minute or two, I actually like to turn off, when I see the water is boiling, I'll turn it off, and I'm going to let them sit for just one more minute. Since whenever they're just close to done, I turn the water off to where the water isn't boiling and continuing to cook the shrimp, but just turn it off because the heat will continue to cook the shrimp, but it allows it to stay a little bit longer in the water to soak up a little bit more of those ingredients. So that's important. We'll come back to that in a second. Tomatoes in. They've just been coarsely cut. Whenever I cut the tomato in half, I gave them a gentle squeeze over a sink to get out some of the seeds, but it didn't get too crazy with it. Some recipes you'll see will have you peel the tomato, will have you seed the tomato. All that takes a little bit of extra work, and you could definitely do that, but I find since I'm putting it in a blender anyway, I don't mind a couple of those seeds, and the skin just gets pulverized, so I'm fine with all that, but depending on the tomato or your preference, you might want to do that. Tomatoes in. Next, we just have some simple red onions. Again, real easy, everything coarsely chopped. Little red onion's going to go in. That's going to add some good flavor. Now, what's great about gazpacho is you add a lot of these different cold vegetables that add a great texture to the soup as well and some flavor as well. So this is something I did peel and seed. This is just a little bit of diced cucumber, and that's just going to dice up and be real beautiful and match perfectly with this soup. So tomatoes, onions, celery, well, not celery, cucumber, red bell pepper. Here's the celery, a little bit of celery. Don't like to add too much celery because I find celery, the stalk of the celery, can be very fibrous. And even though it's going to get pureed, I like to just have a little bit in there. Whole garlic. Let's talk about this. Garlic is really great. I'm just going to put the whole cloves in because, again, everything will puree in the blender. However, I go fairly cautiously with raw garlic because I find raw garlic, like if I were to just bite into this right now, raw garlic is very strong. When you cook garlic, it really mellows. If you roast garlic or boil garlic, the flavor itself mellows and you can really eat the clove. But raw garlic itself is very strong, so I'm only going to add for all of this 2 cloves. That's going to be in there. This is a good point to come back to our seafood. Now, our shrimp they're beautifully pink. They've started to curl, they've sat in the liquid for a while, and now it's just really nice cooked shrimp. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna plunge these directly into a little bit of salted, because I always like to keep that flavor in salted ice water. And why are we doing this? Well, first of all, this is a cold soup, so we're gonna be serving everything cold. But anytime you're pre-boiling shrimp that you're gonna serve later, and this is a great dish where you can make everything ahead of time, anytime you're pre-blanching a vegetable or a piece of seafood like this, you always want to stop this cooking process as fast as possible. If I were to just put this shrimp right here on a plate, you see how I have all this steam coming off of the shrimp? Well, the steam means it's still hot. And if it's steam, that means this is literally still cooking right now. So what we want to do is we want to chill this or shock it as fast as possible. So we're going to go directly into ice water, and this will instantly stop the shrimp from cooking and start to chill it. And now, if we were to make this ahead of time, say you were going to make this a day before, something like that, we can now take these shrimp out, let them sit in here for a minute or so in this nice ice water. You don't want to let them sit too long because they'll actually start to absorb some of that water, and we don't want that. But just right now, we're just going to let them chill and do their thing. So back to our gazpacho. Last thing we went in is garlic. Now that's your base. Now everything we're going to add now is going to be just kind of, this would be pretty classic. Maybe once we get this parsley and cilantro in, this is the point where you could just grind this, and this is going to be your classic cilantro. I mean, your classic gazpacho, not cilantro. We just put it in parsley, a little bit of cilantro, but now we're going to really start adding some things that are not traditional to a typical gazpacho. We are going to add some tomato juice. And what this is going to do is, even though a tomato is mostly water, this is going to give, when we start to puree this, this is going to give the soup itself a little bit of body. So we're going to add that right in. And now this is where the fun begins. This is where now we're really going to add some interesting flavors. And you'll see this will now kind of take on more of we're going to go in the direction of the inspiration of Bloody Mary, and we're going to add a lot of those robust spices that are typical of a Bloody Mary. That's really going to give this cold soup, it's going to be cold and refreshing, but have this really interesting spice and flavor. So let's start doing that. So some of the first ingredients we're going to add, this is just a little bit of horseradish. You can find that in the store in little jars. We're going to add a horseradish to it. Horseradish, think of cocktail sauce and tomatoes, classic pairing. It's going to add a little bit of heat. We're going to add to this just a little splash of balsamic vinegar. This is going to add a little bit of acidity to the whole soup, and as well as that, we're going to add just a squeeze of lemon juice. I love these little juicers, but definitely not needed. Just a little squeeze of lemon juice right in. Here, we're going to add a little bit of green onions. That's going to go in. Now we're going to add the spices. Now this is this isn't traditional. You won't see this. We have, since we're cooking Cajun, we got to add just a little bit of cayenne pepper is going to go in. You want to be real careful with this. It is spicy. All these spices are really strong, so you want to add just a little. I think we have 1/8 of a teaspoon. Just a little dash is really going to give this a robust flavor. So cayenne pepper, we're going to get some heat. Next, we're actually going to add a little bit of cinnamon. Now, this is kind of unique for a dish so savory, but the cinnamon is just going to add this really unique flavor to the dish. As well as that, we got some celery salt. That's going to be that Bloody Mary flavor. It's going to have that strong kind of Bloody Mary celery flavor that we're going to add, and that's where that comes from. And then next we're going to add, this is another interesting spice as well. This is just a little bit of clove. And all this cinnamon and this clove and this celery salt are very robust spices that are really just going to kind of bloom in this soup and give it just such a unique flavor that when you taste it, it's just going to have this really spicy. And when I say spicy, I'm not talking about heat. I'm just talking about all these different unique flavors that you get from adding the spices. Now, we also are going to give a little dash of Worcestershire, I never know if I'm saying that right, and Tabasco sauce, a little hot sauce. Boom, that's going to go in. Want to be careful of that. It's going to add some good heat. And then we're going to add a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. Now, this is just going to add a little bit of fat that's going to kind of help mellow out all these flavors in here. So extra virgin olive oil goes in. And then finally, our last ingredients we're going to add, since we've just went and added all these robust spices, the clove, the cinnamon, the cayenne pepper, the Worcestershire, and the hot sauce. To kind of balance that out, we're going to add just a couple tablespoons of just sugar. And what that's going to do is it's not going to give this a sweet flavor, but it's going to help balance out all those spiciness. A lot of cooking is balance. If you add acidity oftentimes, think of a vinaigrette on a salad dressing. You have an acid, and then you have the oil. Well, you have acid and fat. So you're always looking to balance flavors. So now we have a lot of spice. We're going to add a little bit of sugar, balance out all these flavors. And now that we have all this in here, this is where the fun starts. We're going to go ahead and just puree this with the blender. You want to be careful here. Make sure we got a lot of stuff going on, and we're just going to kick it on. This blender's great if you have this. It has this little plunger that helps if anything gets stuck, but often you can just shake that, and this is going to puree up pretty good. Just looking to get all that should puree up just perfectly like that. What I like to do at this point is, once I have that, this is where you want to season with your salt and your pepper. And what I would do is, for this, always do your salt and pepper last. That way you're going to add a little and then taste it, add a little, then taste it until you get just the seasonings just right. So we're going to add that salt and pepper last because you have so much base spice in here. Get this pureed first, taste it, and then start adding your salt and pepper till you get that perfect balance. Give that one more zip just to get that salt and pepper in there. Just a quick puree. And there we have it. Now before we plate up, we're going to come over here and then we're going to take some of these shrimp out of the water. Just so these can drain. Oftentimes you can go on to, say, a paper towel or something like that. Just let shrimp drain off good because you don't want them to soak in that water too long. But now you have, look at these shrimp, y'all. I mean, you can't beat that. Perfectly cooked shrimp. Only took a few minutes. This, you don't have to cut your vegetables up too fine. Everything's just going to go into a blender. And now, let's go ahead and present this. This is how we would present it in the restaurant. We got our Houmas House soup bowl here. And you can, when you make it, you could leave it right in the blender pitcher, or I would suggest transferring it to another type of pitcher where when you go to serve it, all you have to do is pour it right in. And then this is what makes it Louisiana. We're going to add some of these just gorgeous shrimp. Now, your preference, I'm leaving the tails on for presentation. If you were just having it, say, at a party at home and you wanted it to be a little bit easier to eat, you could definitely take off those tails. We're going to have a couple of those shrimp. Some of these, my favorite, lumps of this beautiful jumbo lump crab meat. We'll come back with a little bit of green onions and parsley. And there you go. This is our Cajun Gazpacho made with shrimp and jumbo lump crab meat. Thank y'all for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Leave a like and a comment on our Facebook page. We love interacting with you guys. We'll see you next week.